They said I lacked discipline. Said I didn't know how the real world worked. They whispered when I walked into the room. Laughed when I walked out of it. They said I had no direction. But I wasn't lost. I was just quiet, and no one asked why. My aunt once told people at a family gathering, "She's allergic to effort." They all laughed. I laughed too, but my stomach twisted. For years, I swallowed shame like it was breakfast. I watched them climb ladders I never even saw. I sat in silence while they wrote my story for me. But a few days ago, her son emailed me. Subject line: "Are you hiring?" My name is Rachel Monroe, I'm 29, and I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. When I was younger, the plan was clear. Not just to me, but to everyone around me. My mom used to say, "Rachel's going to be the first doctor in the family." She'd say it with so much pride, you'd think it was already true. I was the straight-A girl. The one who read extra chapters, color-coded her notes, volunteered on weekends. Not because anyone asked me to, because I thought that's how you earned love. Achievement was my love language. And my family fed on it until I stopped performing. Senior year of college, I hit a wall. Not metaphorically, physically. I passed out in the chemistry lab. One moment I was titrating something for organic chem, and the next, I woke up on the floor with a busted lip and 2 worried TAs hovering over me. Turns out I hadn't eaten a full meal in 3 days. Hadn't slept properly in 6. But I still had every assignment turned in on time. They called it academic exhaustion. I called it collapse. My scholarship advisor suggested a leave of absence. I remember her voice. It was too soft, like she thought I might shatter mid-sentence. She said, "Rachel, you need to take care of yourself. You don't have to prove anything." But the problem was proving things was all I knew how to do. I went home for what was supposed to be a semester of rest. It turned into a year. Then 2. At first, people were understanding. "She just needs a break," my uncle said. "She worked too hard," my mom defended. But by month 6, the understanding turned to whispers. I'd walk into a family dinner, and forks would pause midair. Conversations would shift. Smiles would fade. And then came my Aunt Susan. She was always the loud one, the confident one, the mother of Kyle, the golden boy of the family. Kyle was in med school, top of his class. Susan never missed a chance to mention it. "Harvard is lucky to have him," she'd say, practically glowing. She once cornered me at Thanksgiving, plate in one hand, wine glass in the other. She leaned in close and said, "You know, Rachel, some people use rest as an excuse. Don't let yourself become one of those people." Then she smiled like she'd just given me a gift, and walked away before I could respond. I started to believe her. I'd wake up around 11 a.m., heart pounding, shame curling in my stomach like sour milk. I'd scroll job boards endlessly, but the words swam on the screen. Marketing assistant. Operations coordinator. I didn't even know what half of it meant anymore. How could someone who once memorized the Krebs cycle not understand LinkedIn? The worst part wasn't the joblessness. It was the invisibility. People stopped asking what I was up to. Even my own mother. She'd just say things like, "We'll figure it out," and then change the subject to Kyle or the neighbor's new lawn furniture. No one asked me what I wanted. No one asked if I was okay. They all just assumed I had failed. And failure in our family wasn't discussed. It was edited out. The last time I brought up going back to school, my aunt laughed and said, "What for? So you can drop out again." I laughed too. That's what you do when your dignity has been bartered for silence. You laugh. You disappear. So I stopped bringing it up. I stopped making plans in public. I stopped trying to explain that rest wasn't laziness. That burnout wasn't a flaw in my character. That I wasn't broken, I was just trying to heal. But healing is quiet, and silence isn't interesting. I started reading again. Not textbooks, but stories. Memoirs. Books about rebuilding. I took long walks without my phone. I wrote in a journal like it was the only place I still existed. And I made a decision. I wouldn't ask for a seat at their table anymore. I'd build my own table. Even if no one saw it. No announcements. No explanations. No more waiting for their approval. I started over. But no one noticed. It started with a Google search.
Not for a job.
Not for a graduate program. Just how to earn $200 from home. It felt like a small rebellion, like whispering in a library full of people who'd already given up on you. I found an online gig listing. It wasn't glamorous. Helping edit resumes for recent college grads. $10 per resume. No health benefits. No guarantee. But something in me whispered, start small.
So I did.
I signed up on a freelancing site, wrote a profile, and waited. Nothing happened for 3 days. Then a message popped up. Hi Rachel, would love help cleaning up my resume for a tech sales role. I stared at the screen like it was a lifeline. I worked on it like it was a thesis. Polished every sentence. Rephrased the job descriptions. Added power verbs. Researched the company. When I sent it back, the client replied within 2 hours. This is incredible. I got the interview. I cried. Quietly. No applause. No recognition. Just the light of my laptop and the sound of healing beginning. I started getting more requests. Some people needed cover letters. Others needed LinkedIn profiles updated. It wasn't steady, but it was something. I created a folder called Proof I'm Not Useless. Every thank you message went in there. Every, I got the job. Every, you made me feel confident again. I didn't post about it on Facebook. Didn't tell my mom. And definitely didn't mention it at family dinners. I wasn't ready for their smirks. I needed this sacred. Private.
Mine.
Around month 4, I had a client named Darlene. She was in her 60s. Had worked in retail her whole life, but lost her job during the pandemic. She wanted to apply for a front desk position at a community center. She didn't even know how to open Word. We scheduled a Zoom call, and I spent the first 20 minutes walking her through how to unmute herself. She laughed nervously and said, "This machine hates me." I replied, "No, it just doesn't speak Darlene yet." That made her laugh louder. We worked on her resume together, line by line. I translated her years of experience into corporate language. Instead of managed cashier schedules, it became led team operations and optimized scheduling efficiency. When we finished, she said, "I didn't know I was allowed to sound like that." 3 weeks later, she emailed me. Subject: I got it. In all caps. I opened the message. It just said, "You brought my baby into my living room again. Thank you." I didn't understand. So I called her. She told me her granddaughter used to live with her before moving out of state. They hadn't spoken face-to-face in over a year. But now, with her new job at the community center, she was being trained on basic tech. She learned how to use Zoom. Her granddaughter set up a weekly call. They'd had their first video chat the night before. She said, "I got to see her eyes when she laughed."
Do you know what that feels like?
I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, in the middle of my kitchen, crying. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in years, I felt useful. I wasn't curing cancer, wasn't running a company, but I had helped someone reconnect with her granddaughter. Through words, through patience, through work that most people in my family would roll their eyes at. I started building a system, a form, a calendar, a name. I called it Clarity Pages.
Simple.
Accessible. Focused on helping people feel seen on paper. I worked from my bedroom. Wore the same hoodie 4 days in a row. Still ate ramen more than I'd like to admit. But I was rebuilding something no one else could see. Myself. Some nights, I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, whispering, "This matters." Even if no one claps. And I believed it. Because the truth is, not every success is loud. Some grow in silence. Some rise without announcement. It didn't make headlines, but it mattered. Clarity Pages grew slowly. At first, I'd get 2 or 3 clients a week, mostly referrals. Then one of my clients, a high school career counselor, asked if I'd be open to helping their senior class prepare for internships. I said yes. They paid me $150 for a 3-hour virtual workshop. I spent 2 days preparing for it. When I signed off that night, I cried, not because of the money, but because I'd felt like a real person again. I built a simple website using a drag-and-drop editor, set up a PayPal business account, added a scheduling tool so clients could book me. Then I created free templates, resume formats, email scripts, cover letter guides. No paywall, just value. People started sharing them. One of my former clients posted my site in a Facebook group for unemployed women over 40. I got 27 inquiries in one day. I wasn't ready, but I showed up anyway. I started keeping track. Month 6, 112 resumes edited. Month 8, 9 group workshops. Month 10, my first partnership with a local workforce agency. By the end of the first year, I had helped 480+ people. Most were women. Many were mothers. Some were rebuilding after divorce, after job loss, after life told them they were no longer valuable. And yet, my family knew none of this. To them, I was still figuring things out. Still trying something with computers. Still Rachel, the free spirit. I remember sitting at a family dinner, Christmas Eve. Aunt Susan was bragging about Kyle again. He got an offer from Johns Hopkins. Full package. They're even helping him with relocation. Everyone clapped. I clapped too. Then she turned to me almost performatively and asked, "So, Rachel, what are you up to these days?" I smiled and said, "I run a resume consulting business. I work with career centers, job seekers, and a few nonprofits now." She blinked. "Oh, still doing that thing online?" That thing online was helping people feed their kids. That thing online was helping women regain confidence after decades of self-doubt. But I just smiled. Because what was the point? Later that night, I overheard her talking to another aunt in the kitchen. She's always been a bit scattered, you know? One minute it's pre-med, the next it's whatever this is. Some people aren't built for structure. I stood on the other side of the doorway, silent. My hands clenched so tightly the mug I was holding cracked. I wanted to burst in, throw my numbers on the table, scream about my 82% client placement rate, my 24% repeat client ratio, the fact that one of my templates was used by a nonprofit in New Jersey for a career workshop. But I didn't. Because I knew no metric would ever be enough for them. They didn't understand this kind of success. If it didn't come with a lab coat or a title or a degree, it didn't count. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I had hired a part-time assistant to help with scheduling, created a monthly newsletter, launched a mentorship program for first-gen college students. We were onboarding over 1,200 site users per month. Clients came from 16 different states. Still, not a single family member subscribed to the newsletter. Not one asked to see the website. No one ever said, "I'm proud of you." And yet, I felt it growing inside me. Worth. Independent of their recognition. Rooted not in applause, but in impact. One of my clients, a mother of 3, got promoted from a warehouse job to an HR role at her company. She sent me a video of her kids cheering when she got the call. Her youngest held up a sign that said, "My mommy is a boss now." I watched it on repeat. In that moment, no doctorate, no round of applause, no family blessing could have matched what I felt. Still, I stayed quiet at home. My mom would ask how I was doing. I'd say, "Good." She'd nod, smile, and then pivot the conversation back to Kyle's fellowship. That duality hurt, thriving outwardly, invisible inwardly. But I held it, like a flame cupped in my hands, because deep down I knew the world was starting to see me, even if they didn't. It was a chilly Saturday morning in October when I decided to visit a little coffee shop near the outskirts of town, a quiet spot tucked between an old bookstore and a florist. I had recently finished a freelance project and felt like rewarding myself with a moment of peace. I didn't expect anything more than a latte and maybe a blueberry muffin. As I waited in line, I noticed a woman a few places ahead of me glancing back repeatedly. She had sharp eyes, maybe in her early 50s, dressed in a tailored coat with a scarf tied perfectly around her neck. I offered a polite smile when our eyes met, but she looked away quickly. I brushed it off. After I placed my order and sat down, she approached my table. "Excuse me, are you Madison Grant?" she asked. I blinked, unsure how this stranger knew my name. Yes, I am, I said, trying to place her face. I knew it, she beamed. I read your article on sustainable architecture last month, the one about urban green spaces. That piece was brilliant. I shared it with my entire department. I nearly choked on my coffee. You read that? I asked, stunned. That article had been a freelance submission to an online environmental journal. I hadn't even received much feedback from the editor. The woman nodded. I'm Dr. Lauren Reyes. I chair the Department of Urban Development over at Western State University. We've been integrating your ideas into our student think tank. Honestly, your writing was so insightful, it made me rethink some of our outdated models. My heart felt like it had paused, rewound, and played again on a louder volume. Here was a complete stranger, an accomplished academic, telling me that my quiet, behind-the-scenes work mattered. She pulled out a card from her purse and handed it to me. We're holding a symposium next month. We'd love to have you speak. I know it's short notice, but your voice is fresh. We need more minds like yours pushing boundaries. I took the card, staring at the gold embossed print like it was a golden ticket. After she walked away, I sat there for a long time. I wasn't used to this. I had spent years rebuilding myself quietly, without applause or attention. While my old classmates posted about their promotions and leadership retreats, I had worked silently, designing, writing, researching, failing, trying again. There were no likes, no celebratory dinners. Just me and my laptop, and a belief that I was building something worthwhile. And then this. Recognition from someone who didn't know my past, who wasn't part of my hometown echo chamber, who saw me only for my work, not my history. It felt real. When I got home, I placed the card on my desk and stared at it like it might evaporate. I wasn't sure if I'd accept the offer. Part of me was terrified. What if I wasn't ready? What if I said the wrong thing? But deeper than fear was something else, validation. Not the kind that came from childhood friends finally noticing me, or from family members who only measured worth through salary brackets. This was different. This was the universe whispering, keep going. Someone's watching. That night, as I curled up with my journal, I wrote the words, today, someone saw me.
Really saw me.
And for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. It was a breezy Saturday morning in early spring when everything changed. I was at a local leadership conference for young entrepreneurs hosted at the downtown Marriott, a posh venue I'd only ever dreamed of setting foot in as a guest, not as a participant. I wasn't a speaker or anything high-profile, just an attendee with a name tag and a notebook full of ideas. Still, I was eager, hungry to learn, to listen, to absorb. The ballroom was packed. Everyone looked so put together, tailored suits, designer heels, confident smiles. I still had that thrifted blazer and my hair in a low, simple bun. But my heart was proud. I belonged here. I had built something with my own hands, and I was here to grow it. As the speaker wrapped up his keynote, people began to mill about, exchanging cards and compliments. I stood near the refreshment table, sipping lukewarm coffee and jotting down takeaways in my notebook, when a voice behind me said, Addison? Addison Reed. I turned around, startled. It was Jennifer. Jennifer Wallace. My cousin. My critic. My ghost from the past. Her hair was sleeker than ever, and she wore that expensive smirk she always had in high school. The one that said she'd already assessed you and filed you under meh. Oh wow, she said, her voice dripping with artificial surprise. I didn't know you were into this kind of stuff. This kind of stuff? I replied calmly. You know, business conferences. I figured you were still doing your art thing. She said art thing like it was a disease. I smiled, trying to keep it graceful. I actually run a design studio now. It's going really well. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. That's so. Before I could respond, someone else stepped in, someone I hadn't noticed standing beside her. A woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes and a confident stance. Wait, Addison Reed? She asked, extending her hand. I've been looking for you. Jennifer blinked, confused. I took the woman's hand cautiously. I'm Melinda Krause, creative director at Bravely Media, she said. We've been following your work online. especially the mental health rebranding campaign you did for Flourish. That was genius. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Jennifer was frozen too. I wanted to introduce myself earlier, Melinda continued, but it was so packed in there. I love how you blend design with emotional narrative. It's rare and really powerful. I stammered a thank you, barely able to keep my voice steady. We're looking to collaborate with emerging studios for our next social campaign. I'd love to get coffee sometime. Do you have a card? I handed her my card like it was a sacred object. Jennifer's jaw was still hanging in disbelief. Oh, Melinda said, turning to Jennifer. You two know each other? Jennifer cleared her throat. She's my cousin. Melinda smiled politely, then turned back to me. Well, Addison, I'll be in touch. Great meeting you. She walked off, and I was left standing beside a cousin who had once laughed at my dreams and now looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Jennifer let out a little laugh, trying to recover.
Wow.
You're, legit. I shrugged lightly. Been working hard. There was a long pause between us. Well, she said, guess I underestimated you. No worries, I replied, meeting her gaze calmly. You weren't the only one. And with that, I turned and walked away, shoulders straight, chest open, spine tall. As I headed toward the networking lounge, I felt it. The shift. The moment when the tables turned. The moment when the girl they had ignored, dismissed, mocked, and belittled was no longer invisible. I didn't need her validation. Or anyone's really. But that look on her face? That stunned, silent realization? It meant everything. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I had reclaimed my story. Not by screaming. Not by proving. But by becoming. It wasn't some grand announcement or a flashy reveal. The power shift began in the smallest, most poetic ways only someone who had lived through humiliation would truly appreciate. It started at the bank. I'd walked in to set up a business account. My boutique software firm, Green Bench Solutions, was now handling state-level contracts for educational platforms. The bank manager, a poised woman named Kristen, walked me to her office and asked if I'd need a private banking advisor. Just as we were wrapping up, a voice floated from across the room. Emily? Emily Robbins. I turned. It was Dana, the same Dana who had laughed behind her hand when I'd worn my brother's hand-me-downs to school. The girl who once called me tragic for not having brand-name clothes. And now here she was, standing in line at the teller window in her scuffed Payless flats, holding a wrinkled withdrawal slip. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked older than I remembered. Worn down. Her posture slouched with the weight of something. Life, maybe. Her eyes widened when she noticed I wasn't just standing there, but shaking hands with the bank manager, who addressed me as Ms. Robbins. We locked eyes, and for a second, I saw her confusion trying to compute a new equation.
Me.
In tailored navy blue. Confident.
Polished.
Smiling. Not mockingly, but warmly. The kind of smile you offer to a distant past that can no longer touch you. Wow, she finally said. You look amazing. I nodded, polite. Thanks, Dana. Hope you're well. The manager ushered me back into her office, and I caught the flicker in Dana's expression, recognition mixing with regret. It kept happening. In small places. Quiet corners of the world where they never expected to see me again, let alone shining. At a local school district tech conference, I gave a keynote about digital literacy and equitable access. As I walked off the stage, a man in an ill-fitting suit approached me. It was Mr. Jarvis, my old high school math teacher. The one who once said in front of the class, "Some people just aren't meant for numbers, Emily. Stick to English." His hand reached for mine like he didn't remember, or maybe hoped I wouldn't. That was truly inspiring, he said. I paused, took a breath. Thank you. It's amazing what people can do when someone doesn't tell them what they're not meant for. He flinched just slightly. Oh, well, it's good to see you doing so well. I'm doing more than well, I replied. We just landed a contract to redesign the state's entire K-12 curriculum interface. His face blinked, and I didn't stay to explain. I didn't owe it to him. But perhaps the most surreal moment came on a Tuesday morning at my office. I'd just finished reviewing a portfolio for a new UX hire when my assistant popped in. "Hey, Emily, there's someone here who asked to speak with the owner directly. He doesn't have an appointment, but said he's an old acquaintance." I raised an eyebrow. "Name? Jason Walker." I nearly dropped my coffee. Jason. My old crush. The boy who'd told me I wasn't ambitious enough for him. The same Jason who once said I lacked drive after I turned down an unpaid internship his father offered out of pity. I stood slowly. "Send him in." When he walked through the door, his face betrayed everything: shock, awkward admiration, and a tinge of disbelief. "Wow," he said, looking around my office. "This is impressive." "Thanks. What brings you here?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, I saw a green bench at the top of the quarterly awards list. Then I saw your name. I had no idea you were behind this company." I nodded, unfazed. Most people didn't. He looked around again, hesitated. "I was actually hoping you'd be open to some kind of collaboration. I started a tech recruiting firm, and we've been trying to get into the educational sector." The irony hit me like a warm breeze. Years ago, I would have stumbled over myself to impress him. Now he was standing in my office asking for a seat at the table. I smiled politely. "Well, Jason, I'll have my acquisitions lead review your proposal. If it aligns with our values, we'll reach out." His smile faltered. He realized I wasn't joking. I was the gatekeeper now. The power had shifted, and I didn't need to slam the door. I simply didn't offer to hold it open. That was the thing. I didn't need revenge. I didn't crave applause or social media posts flaunting my glow-up. The deepest satisfaction came from silent recognition, from watching their expressions shift when they realized I had become the version of myself they never believed in, without needing them to get there. I had taken their doubt, their dismissal, their smug laughter, and used it all as quiet fuel. Now, they were the ones navigating life from the sidelines, while I moved center stage. Without ever raising my voice, without ever announcing my comeback, I had become undeniable. I didn't even realize how much had changed until I overheard a conversation I was never meant to hear. It was in the break room of our new downtown headquarters, a floor-to-ceiling glass fortress that used to intimidate me every time I walked by it years ago. Now, it had my name on the lease. I had just stepped in to grab a tea when I heard the receptionist whispering to one of our interns. She used to work in a basement, the receptionist said, awestruck. Now she signs everyone's checks. The intern replied, "Wait, seriously?" Like, as in she was someone's assistant. The receptionist nodded. "That's what I heard. Something about her cousin treating her like a maid. Wild, right?" I didn't say anything. I quietly turned back into the hallway, letting the door click softly behind me. Tea forgotten. I'd become a story now. Not a sob story. Not a side character. A legacy. Chachi, yes, that Chachi, had aged in ways the mirror didn't show. She still wore her lipstick sharp, her words even sharper. But the confidence? It had cracks now. Little ones. The kind that show when life doesn't play out like you predicted. I hadn't heard from her in almost a year. That is, until her son, Ryan, sent in a job application. It landed in my assistant's inbox with a cover letter that began, "I'm eager to prove myself again after a tough few years. I've learned from my past mistakes." He didn't even realize it was me reviewing it. At first, I laughed. Not out of malice, but out of the sheer irony. The same Ryan who once mocked me for babysitting spreadsheets now wanted a spot on my marketing team. A junior position. Low pay. No power. But the humility in his words struck something in me. So I called for an interview. When he entered the conference room, he froze. His jaw dropped, not dramatically, just slightly, like his soul forgot how to behave. "Madison," he stammered. I nodded, calm. My tone was professional. "Please have a seat." We walked through the interview. His resume wasn't stellar. His last role had ended abruptly. His experience didn't wow me. But his tone had changed. There was a quiet to him now, a lack of ego. The same humility, I once had to learn the hard way. Do you know who owns this company? I asked near the end. He swallowed. You do. I Googled after I saw the name on the meeting request. I waited. I'm sorry, he said. For the way I treated you. For the way my mom made things worse. I was a jerk. I get that now. I nodded slowly. We all grow. He stared, surprised. You'd really consider hiring me? I believe in second chances, I said simply. When Ryan started, the staff didn't know our history. I didn't want them to. I wanted him to earn everything on his own. But word spreads. One day, one of our senior team members came up to me and asked, "Is it true that new guy Ryan is your cousin?" I nodded. She smiled. He seems really respectful. Kind of surprised, actually. I heard he used to be different. People evolve, I replied. That's what we're all here to do. As the months passed, Chachi finally reached out. It wasn't a phone call, just a polite, cautiously worded email. Subject: Congratulations. Madison. I heard through the grapevine about your success. Just wanted to say I'm proud of you, even if I didn't show it when it mattered. Life has a funny way of humbling all of us. I hope there's no bad blood. Chachi. I didn't respond immediately. I waited a week. Then I replied, "Thank you. I hope you're well. No bad blood, just different paths." I didn't offer to meet. I didn't extend a branch of reconciliation. Because this wasn't about revenge. It never was. It was about balance. About returning to the center of my own life. The full circle came on a Friday evening. We held a launch event for a new client campaign. It was high-profile, sponsors, press, the works. I wore a midnight blue dress, my name printed on the step and repeat backdrop. I had become what magazines called a quiet mogul. Chachi showed up with Ryan. I hadn't invited her, but Ryan must have extended it. When we made eye contact across the venue, I didn't flinch. She approached slowly, uncertain, her heels clicking gently across the polished marble. You look powerful, she said. Thank you, I replied. You look familiar. She laughed, soft and dry. Fair enough. We stood in silence for a moment. I didn't see this coming, she finally said. But I'm glad it did. You earned it. I did, I agreed. No false modesty. Just truth. She looked around the room, my people, my name, my impact. I guess you didn't need my approval after all, she said. I smiled.
No.
But I did need my dignity, and I got that back. She gave a small nod and faded back into the crowd. Later that night, as the venue cleared out, Ryan approached me again. I know it must still be weird. Having me here, he said. Not weird. Just poetic, I answered. He chuckled. If you ever want me to step away, I'd understand. I looked at him, really looked at him. No, I said. You're doing good work. Keep showing up. He smiled, relieved. The next week, he sent me a thank you email. It ended with, "It means a lot that you didn't hold the past against me. I'm learning every day." I replied with just one line. So am I. I never set out to become a symbol. I didn't chase legacy or fame or validation the way I once chased approval from people like Aunt Chachi. But somewhere along the way, between the tears I cried in silence and the years I spent rebuilding what they tried to break, I became something more powerful than they ever imagined, a woman who didn't need them to see her to be whole. It started with the neighborhood kids. They used to run past me without a second glance, the way I once faded into the wallpaper of my own family.
But now?
They stopped to ask questions. How did I start my bakery? How did I afford the building? Why did the pastries taste better than anywhere else? At first, I'd smile and wave them off with simple answers. But one day, a little girl named Rosie tugged on my apron and asked, "Miss Maggie, do you think I could do something like this, even if no one believes in me?" I crouched down to her level, looked her in the eyes, and said, "Especially if no one believes in you, Rosie. That's when you build it so well, they can't ignore it." I didn't realize I was planting seeds. But I was. Soon, I started hosting weekend baking classes. Just a handful of kids. then a few teenagers, then young women. Some of them were dealing with the same invisible wounds I had carried, being dismissed, laughed at, underestimated. I taught them more than recipes. I taught them how to own a space with quiet confidence, how to stop apologizing for taking up room, how to build a life without waiting for permission. Word spread, not just about the bakery's flaky croissants and perfect cinnamon rolls, but about the woman behind it. Journalists came, curious about the self-made woman who turned a family insult into a neighborhood empire. I turned most of them away, not out of spite, but because this story was never about headlines. But one reporter stayed after I closed for the night. She asked just one question. What kept you going when no one clapped for you? I told her the truth. Because I finally learned that clapping for yourself is louder than all the silence in the world. She smiled, wrote her piece, left quietly. A month later, I found myself on the cover of a small but respected magazine. The title read, "The Queen of Quiet Power." I laughed when I saw it, not because it was wrong, but because it felt right in a way I never expected. Then came the mentorship grant. An anonymous donor wanted to fund a program that helped underdog women start their own businesses. They named it the Margaret Sloan Foundation. I never used my full name in public, but somehow someone had noticed. That someone, I later learned, was the daughter of a woman I once helped in silence. A woman who had come into my bakery years ago, crying over being fired from her corporate job. I'd slipped her an extra loaf of bread and a warm smile. We'd talked. She'd turned her life around. And her daughter remembered. It hit me like a wave. Sometimes your legacy is built in moments you barely notice. Sometimes it's not about flipping the table or raising your voice. It's about showing up again and again until the world can't look away anymore. And as for Aunt Chachi,
Well,
she came back, not with an apology, but with an invitation. Come to dinner, she said one afternoon, walking into the bakery with hesitant eyes and a nervous smile. The whole family would love to see you. They're proud.
proud.
That word, once dangled in front of me like a carrot I could never reach, now meant little. Not because it wasn't nice, but because I had already become everything I needed without it. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just handed her a box of her favorite lemon tarts and said, "Tell them I hope they're well." And that was enough. I still pass the old family home sometimes. It's smaller now, not in size, but in power over me. It used to feel like a fortress I'd been exiled from. Now it's just another house. My home is elsewhere. In my bakery. In the women I mentor. In the legacy I never intended but deeply cherish. Sometimes people ask me what changed. Was it success? Money? Recognition? But the truth is simpler. I stopped waiting to be chosen. I chose myself. That's what I want people to remember me for, not the success, not the magazine covers, not the comeback, but for the quiet courage it takes to stand up, day after day, in a world that wants you to stay small. I didn't get louder. I just got stronger. And sometimes, that's more than enough to change everything.